funds and supplies, but you need a place to track your stuff, cause you're so disorganized. You click open the web page, you heard about a critical role, and now you're ready to kick some butt in that mine shot full of no's. It's TNT, TNT Beyond, yeah, TNT, TNT Beyond. You got your stats, you got your swords, and you got your invisible war. It's TNT, TNT Beyond.
Hello, and welcome to this week's edition of And Beyond, our weekly variety stream. I am Adam Bradford, the product director for D&D Beyond, and I'm going to let you say your own name this week.
I'm Todd Kenrick. I'm the content director at D&D Beyond.
Hello, Todd. How you doing today?
I'm doing good.
All right, good.
I'm excited to make disaster cookies.
Yeah, I think their official name is Sweet Dream Cookies, but
That's not how these are going to turn out.
we'll see if this ends up being a dream or a nightmare.
No.
So we are very happy to have with us today. We're going to try to just jump right in because we have so much going on and so much to do today. But we are very happy to have the creator of Eberron, Mr. Keith Baker, with us. Hello,
Hey,
Keith.
Baker.
How you doing, Keith?
Hi, everybody. I am doing okay. I am just back from Gen Con, just back. And as you can see, in my lovely kitchen.
Yes.
Because I'm going to try and counterpoint Todd, and, I'll make the dream cookies and you can make the nightmare.
So,
You'll get the Feywild to my Shadowfell.
Keith,
Exactly. I'm the Dalquar, really, but there you go.
we've got to understand. So obviously you told us that you enjoy baking. And so the question is, was this like destiny because of the surname? Did you seek it out? Like, how did that happen?
I do just think, I will say that often when I'm telling people my name, I will say Keith Baker, like butcher and candlestick maker. Yeah, what can I say? I'm a baker. Comes naturally.
Nice. All right, so we're going to try to jump into this, and so we're going to try to prep the cookies themselves. I do not have an oven where I currently am, but it looks like
you've got all the supplies. I like it.
Yeah, but you two have ovens, so you're going to actually try this out today on the stream. So we're going to get the prepping part done, get it in the oven, then we'll talk a little bit more about how baking cookies impacts our D&D experience, and then we will shift into talking all kinds of D&D things and Eberron things.
Because everything does connect. I will say that these cookies, so they're called Sweet Dream Cookies, and I first encountered them when I was living in Boulder, Colorado, and it was just a local bakery had these big Sweet Dream cookies, and it's a chocolate chip cookie but with some ginger and cinnamon in it. And I thought it was just a thing they'd made up, and I really liked them. And then fast forward 10 years later to me living in Portland, and I suddenly said, hey, there's an internet. What happens if I put this name in? Can I find that recipe? And it turns out that actually the recipe comes from a magazine article from like 1986. And it's out there. So I've been making them ever since. And
I think we're releasing we're pasting right now in chat the recipe. So if anyone wants to follow along at home,
jump right in.
If you want to try this tomorrow, by all means, do it.
Follow along at your peril.
So obviously, of course, dreams are something that have always been interesting to me from a role-playing standpoint. One of the first things, in fact, the first thing I had published professionally was something for Atlas Games, indie role-playing game Over the Edge. And it was called Forgotten Dreams, I think. And it was about using dreams in a sort of modern conspiracy-based RPG. But if you go into Eberron, you have the Dreaming Dark and the plane of Dalquar. There's no ginger or cinnamon called out there. But, I still think it's another point of destiny. So right now, I'm creaming my butter.
Oh, is that what we should be doing?
So what do I need to be doing?
Right.
What's the first thing I need to do?
So we have a bowl.
So ideally what you want to do ahead of time is just sort of get your ingredients separated out. So you have your sugar and your butter.
Yeah.
And those are going to be the things that you'll sort of deal with first. But I like to take the flour, the salt, the cinnamon, and the ginger, and of course the baking soda. If you have baking soda, Todd, and sort of mix those the powder ingredients separately. So you keep the sugar and the butter separate because they're going to be mixed together, but flour, ginger, salt, cinnamon, soda, those can all be sort of put in a bowl so you have them ready.
Okay,
So if we don't have baking soda,
how much flour?
if both of us forgot
How
baking
much flour
soda,
is 2 cups of flour. The recipe says unbleached. I don't worry about it. That's just for grognards.
oh wow, throwing out the real words.
Yes. And and ideally, again, what you've done is leave your butter out a bit so it's softened. And so then it doesn't actually make it that difficult to get it all creamed up, because what I'm doing next is, having creamed up my butter, I'm going to mix it with the sugar.
Okay, so I should probably cream the butter first. Okay.
Yeah, and of course, life is much easier if you own a stand mixer or something like that. Otherwise, that's why you definitely want to let the butter soften beforehand.
Okay, so I'm going to do the 2 sticks of butter right now.
Yep.
And then I want to put in what with
Then
that?
you add the sugar.
Okay.
So it's
Ooh, slimy. It's a hot day in Seattle.
So wait, we're just mixing butter and sugar right now? Is that what's happening?
right now you're mixing the butter and the sugar, and you want to get like a really good sort of mix between them. So you end up with a nice sort of, basically what you don't want is loose sugar. By the time you're done, all the sugar should be sort of absorbed into the mass.
Are two kinds of sugar right now. There's brown sugar.
I will say butter and brown sugar is one of the better things in life, and you could just abandon this project now, Todd, and just eat the brown sugar and butter.
I'm just leaving. Really bye, Adam.
Okay.
So how much sugar do we need in these 2 sticks of butter?
You need 2 sticks of butter, 1.5 cups of brown sugar, and it's all brown sugar.
Oh, not the white sugar.
No, you were not paying attention, perhaps.
No, I got both. I got both.
Okay, good.
I mean, one of them needs to be powdered, Todd.
Say that again.
Do you have powdered for one of them?
It feels powdery.
Okay.
So the powdered sugar, that's what you're talking about. That actually it comes at the very end, and you roll the cookies in the powdered sugar.
Oh, okay. That's okay. So 1.5 of brown.
Pour?
Right. So you use a bunch of powdered sugar, but it doesn't actually go into the cookies. It goes onto the cookies. And that sort of offsets the ginger and the cinnamon. Well, but this is all about trying a new rule system. It's always good to try something new, but it's okay. We have to remember that, like any role-playing game, we're just doing this for ourselves. And as long as we're happy with the results, it doesn't matter if we're doing everything precisely right.
How long have you been baking? And does that, I mean, honestly, does that like level of patience or like adding the ingredients kind of help you with world building?
I think, I certainly have some thoughts on that I'll dump into in more depth later, but I certainly think it doesn't hurt. I actually started when I was 6 or 7, I started making hard candy. And one of my favorite things to do was to make hard candy and make the colors wrong. So, for example, make yellow candy, but, so like a lollipop, but make yellow candy, but make it lime flavored, or make orange candy that's grape flavored.
Okay,
just to mess with people? Okay.
It messes with people. If you take a piece of, what looks like an orange lollipop and you put it in your mouth and it tastes like grape, people get confused. And so what can I say? I like pushing the envelope even then. But I don't know when, I didn't really do much in college. I guess.
Like, is that in general, or you didn't do much baking?
No. Yeah, no, I just didn't do much baking.
Either way.
What can I say? You're living in a dorm or something like that. So I'm just saying, where I'm getting to here, I'm getting to where all my sugar and butter have sort of come together in a big blob
Hey, mine
like
looks
that.
kind of like that. So
And so you just want to, again, get like you want to make sure as much as possible that the butter has been sort of completely blended and that you don't have loose sugar.
How edible is this right now?
It is extremely edible. And just take a taste, seriously. You know, I am always tempted at this point to just scrap the cookies and just say, brown sugar and butter, good enough.
Oh, my hands feel so soft.
that was a religious
Now, this is where it's going to
experience.
get less edible, because what we're about to do is add an egg. And, you know, salmonella and all that, you're theoretically not supposed to eat it when there's raw egg until you've cooked it. But I'd allow it. You know, I trust your constitution save here.
After our last game, I wouldn't trust any save I make.
That is true. That was you didn't die in the first on your first roll. I mean, that was something.
Everything's a win.
All right. So now I'm mixing my egg in.
Okay, my hands look. Ooh.
I think I may seriously pass
Are
out.
you using like a spoon or something? Or are you just mashing this up with your hands?
I'm hands on.
You're doing
Wow.
it with your
Are you
hands.
aware that we are a tool using species? I'm just curious.
When did this start?
He needs an integrated tool.
Tools you speak of, other than D&D Beyond?
Yeah, well, fair enough. That's true. They aren't digital tools, but I am personally using a large spoon. Thus, my hands are clean. I'm just noting.
I mean, I'm using a spoon and my hands aren't clean. So
Now, I'm also just curious, what kind of chocolate chips do you guys have?
I have I like lightly sweetened organic chocolate chips of some kind.
All right.
Ghirardelli, semi-sweet,
How about you, Adam?
right there.
Do you
Ghirardelli.
see Ghirardelli?
Yes.
Oh, that's the stuff. Okay,
They smell like
good
heaven.
call. That's where I'm going. So, you know, buzz marketing for Ghirardelli.
Yeah.
Okay, so so now we want to start after we get the egg in. We want to start mashing up the.
Right. So you mash up your butter and your sugar. You add your egg. I usually at this point would add the vanilla. So you're going to throw a teaspoon of vanilla in there and mix that up because, again, you're sort of mixing up the gooey stuff before you get too deep.
Yep.
So that is 1 teaspoon of vanilla, and I'm always happy to add slightly extra there because, you know, too much vanilla never hurt anybody, in my opinion. And this,
What amount was that again? Sorry, a teaspoon?
1 teaspoon of vanilla. Mix that a little, and then you can start mixing in the other dry ingredients, the flour, salt. So flour, salt, baking soda, ginger, and ginger and stuff. And I'll also take my point there that I'm going to mix this up a little bit before I dump it in the other thing. So I get my ginger and my cinnamon well distributed. And I do hope the folks at home are enjoying our little baking class here.
Oh yeah.
But
why
'cause,
would
you
they
know,
not love it?
Yeah, I'm just saying, you know, if you love D&D or Eberron, I mean, clearly
This has everything to do with it. Yeah.
Well, I mean, I will say, you know, again, I do have some specific thoughts on the parallels we can draw to D&D, but I'll also say that, let's face it, a very important part of the D&D experience is snacks. So, you know, bake your own snacks and you can save a bundle.
Oh, it's very hard to open jars when you have slimy hands.
Yeah, slimy hands are a
Do you have
problem.
paper
Like
towels,
I say, try a spoon next time. What are you mixing with over there, Adam?
A big wooden spoon.
See, wooden spoon. See, that's a touch of class.
See, my wife thought it would be.
Big, I'm doing a big soup spoon, but the wooden spoon, you know, you got some tradition going there.
Adam, if you had one class to choose that you would be a touch of.
Yes. Well, you know, I'm just saying he's got a level of baker in there. Now, of course, part of the point in Eberron is that, you know, ideally we just be using prestidigitation to, you know, blend this all.
Oh, yeah.
Right.
No.
Keep life simple. You wouldn't even need the ginger. You just be like, charm of ginger.
Charm of ginger.
Well, this comes back to something I've been posting about somewhere is, to me, the thing is spells like prestidigitation, which have an awful lot of handy domestic uses. You can chill, you can heat, you can flavor stuff. I like to think of it that it's not just it's one spell that you just go bing and whatever it is you're thinking about happens. I like to think that when you know prestidigitation, you actually know like a couple dozen tiny little minor spells. So it's the flavor charm and the heat charm are really actually two different things. We're just grouping them all together because if you have prestidigitation, you have all of them. And this is part of my point, is that NPCs may only know one of those. You know, the baker knows how to heat and cool and flavor food, but he doesn't actually know how to start fires or, you know, create things out of thin air, which prestidigitation also does. So this is back to that idea of Eberron being wide magic. There's a lot of magic in the world, but that doesn't mean that it's all as powerful as what player characters can do. It's also more limited.
Okay, so now I've got my vanilla in. I go where now?
So now you're putting in the flour, the salt, the soda, the ginger, and the cinnamon. And like I said, I usually mix those all together and then just dump the whole thing in as sort of one thing.
Okay, so 1 teaspoon of ginger, 1 teaspoon of nutmeg.
Cinnamon, no nutmeg.
Oh, cinnamon, not.
Yeah, don't put nutmeg.
This is a disaster for you.
Wow.
I will say at one point, I can't remember what I used, but I want to say instead of cinnamon, I feel like I put in capsicum or something like that. And boy, those cookies were disaster.
Am I supposed to know what that is, Keith? What did you just say?
It's hot pepper, essentially. Like really hot pepper. Like you took a bite of one of these cookies and it was like your mouth was burning.
Yeah, that's quite an experience.
But it looks kind of like cinnamon when you just have it in a little jar.
Okay.
I wonder if I can get
you
flour
were supposed
out
to know
of
what it
computer.
was, but I guess you failed your cooking check, so that's okay. You never say you had proficiency in this, so
Definitely did not state that.
I've made many unwise choices.
all right, that is okay.
Mistakes were made.
So I'm almost through here. I'm just continuing again. Since you're not using a stand mixer or anything like that, you really want to make sure that you get these mixed well. And I'm fascinated by your mixing by hand technique, Todd. I'm very curious to see how this works.
Absolute worst idea because I have to like touch my gear now.
Yeah,
I gotta go get my cinnamon.
Phrasing, Todd.
all right.
I'll be right. I'll be. Oh god, this is gonna be awful. Right. My wife is gonna kill me.
Again, I just gotta say, just remember, as long as you're having a good time with it, doesn't matter if you're doing it the right way.
I'll be right back, guys.
All right. So I'm almost to the point where I'm going to add the chips in.
Oh, you're already there. Okay.
So what else do you want to talk about while Todd's gone? Can we talk about Todd? Any dirt?
Yeah, clearly some dirt there that we.
Well, I
could
was about to say
bring up.
dirt. Maybe mess might be the
obviously
right answer.
So let's continue to talk about here. Like, so for the folks at home, I know that the recipe calls for walnuts or possibly a substitute of pecans. And why are we not doing that?
So again, this is part of my thing. I'll get a little bit into my theory here, which is part of the point of make the thing your own. You know, whatever it is, whether it's D&D, whether it's whatever, find what works for you, and don't be afraid to bend the rules a little to get the best experience that you like. I personally don't like nuts in my cookies. I'm getting chocolate, I'm getting sugar. The nut changes the experience for me. And so I leave it out. And the funny thing, again, for me is because I mentioned I first encountered these cookies in Boulder, they didn't have nuts in them. So I'm like, the nut thing is not a part of the cookie. I am trying to...
That was added in a later edition, is basically what you're saying.
Exactly. Well, frankly, I think it was an earlier edition. And that's the point. I think that the later edition that I encountered, I came into Cookie 2.0, and I really think that removing the nuts was a really good addition. I mean, a lot of people have trouble with it. Oh, you're back.
Yes, I am back, and I have got the ginger, and I got the.
You didn't come
We are
prepared with
so
all your
proud of you.
supplies?
I'm just saying.
I got
Hold
the
it.
cinnamon in there, and now I need to add what?
And now, so you got cinnamon, you got ginger. You should have half a teaspoon of salt, and you should have a teaspoon of baking soda. But I heard a rumor
Yeah.
that that's not happening.
Yeah, why didn't you bring your baking soda, Todd?
I don't know. I'm messing up today. I'm going to go get the salt.
I didn't have
All
my
right.
baking soda either.
Oops.
Uh-oh. Is that the oven preheated?
That's me setting up my oven. Yeah.
Oh, nice.
So luckily, my oops was just I pressed the wrong button on the oven. Not I put the hot pepper in instead of
So what?
cinnamon.
After I get all of the dry ingredients into what was kind of mildly wet, what happens then? The chips?
So then you put the chips in, and ideally, you end up with something that looks sort of like this, where it's damp but it's not wet.
Okay.
And that's all about if you mix it together. And did you guys put your egg in yet?
Yes.
Yes.
Egg is in.
One egg, because that adds moisture.
And how much salt again? That was like one teaspoon.
Half a teaspoon. All right.
Oh my
Now
goodness,
we're
it
going to come
smells
to
so
that
good.
confectioner's sugar. That is on Keith's end. I'm a little ahead of you guys.
All
I've
right,
been playing this game for a while. I've
It's in the name.
All right, so the salt is in. Now, let's see. What's next?
Flour? Did you put the flour in?
Nope, not yet.
Todd,
All right.
come on.
So 2 cups of flour.
2 cups of flour.
All right.
Oh, wait. This looks beautiful. Can you guys see that? Yes.
Oh,
beautiful.
Very nice. Very
Yes.
nice. And see, again, I say it's all in the mixing spoon.
Exactly.
I do like that we've got you with the mixing spoon. It's coming out great. And we've got Todd using his hands and no baking soda. And, you're giving a sort of spectrum.
I feel fine.
This is fine.
This is doing great.
All right. Now, this is where I'm going to start using my hands. So I am keeping a little cloth aside to help with this. But I'm also looking for another tool.
You said 2 cups of flour?
2 cups of flour.
Yeah, you're going to have to really mix it, Todd, to make it wet again.
But yeah, if you put in 3, you're just going to have trouble. But you can also, I don't know, add another egg or something like that to see what you can do.
All right,
Yeah,
what kind of other tool are we talking, Keith?
2 cups. Where are you at there, Adam?
I think I'm like ready.
Right. So now what you're doing is with a little spoon, or if you're me, and have a little cookie
Oh my goodness, man!
ball
Like
thing.
yeah, ice cream.
You want to make a bunch of little balls, and also you got that powdered sugar around.
I do.
You want to put that powdered sugar in a little dish or a little bowl or something, because what we're doing is taking this little cookie ball and rolling it in powdered sugar.
Oh, I spilled
And
vanilla
then
everywhere.
It goes on the baking sheet. And this is the part where the recipe says, hey, stick the dough in the fridge and chill it for a while.
Yeah.
But, I don't really care about that. Again, that's a sort of, if you're going to be a real rules lawyer about it, sure.
How many chips?
You use definitely a bag of chips. It's 12 ounces. Most bags of chips are 12 ounces. Ghirardelli is actually slightly under 12 ounces, so I put in a little extra. But that's up to you.
All right, so if I don't have a spoon, I'm just balling this up with my hand, right?
Just grab a chunk and ball it up. We call that the Todd. But again, you're balling it up, so it doesn't really
It's not
matter.
from farmland, okay? We didn't have tools when I was growing up.
Back in my neck of the woods. Wait, how big should the little cookie balls be?
You want it to be, basically, you can't really go wrong here. If they're bigger, it just means you're going to have to cook them longer, but about an inch.
Okay.
That
look about right?
A large,
Yeah.
I would say about the size of a 30-sided die. Yeah.
Got it.
This is my giant cookie. I've completed.
Great. You could try just flattening that a bunch and just making that and seeing what happens. Frankly.
So then powdered sugar,
it'd be like one of those big cookies at a restaurant or
That are
something.
raw in the center. Ooh, those are
baking
delicious.
master Keith. Does this look acceptable? Can you see that?
Let me zoom in. Say something louder so
here we
Todd
go.
moves out of my picture.
Yeah, get out of here, Todd. Can you
Let's
see
see
me?
if I can click on you.
All right.
The camera loves me.
Oh,
There we go. Yeah, it's a little on the big side, but I think that'll be fine.
all right.
Wah, 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 wah.
All right. Improve this next one.
It is my hope, of course, they'll all be worth it once it's done.
Roll the tiny ones in the sugar.
I really
Yes.
hope that I can get all this flour and sugar and miscellany out of my computer laptop here.
Yep.
Oh, good.
I think that will
I
happen.
only edit videos for us, so
I was
hope-
about to say, I did point out that I'm making my cookies in my kitchen.
That seems to make more sense.
I'm just saying,
yeah.
I have an office downstairs, and I said, should I make them? No, I'll do it in the kitchen.
and just leave them in a kind of ball shape.
Yep. So as I said, you just roll them in the sugar because that adds both a little texture to it, and it adds a little more sweetness because again you've got the ginger and the cinnamon there.
So when I'm putting it on the baking sheet,
Yep.
it says to place them 2
We
inches
need oil
apart.
at first, though, right?
No, you don't need oil. I mean, you could grease the pan or something, but that's not a huge thing. I usually get about 12 of them. You want them at least an inch apart. So on a typical baking sheet, I've got 3 in a row and usually about 12 cookies, 10 to 12 on the sheet overall. The main thing I'll note is that if you do this all right, your dough is going to make about 60 cookies.
60
So
cookies.
part of it is that, the first batch you make, you'll be able to sort of look at and say, oh, did I put them too close together? Or did I make them too big? Or, something like that. So you always got a little room. Again, like dungeon mastering or world building, you can always learn from your mistakes.
I'm going to learn a lot.
Yeah, you're going to learn a lot. It might not be till next campaign because, I'm not sure how that no baking soda thing is going to work out for you. But, Adam, on
You're
the
locked
other hand,
into badness.
You might get it just for next session, be like, oh, make those a little
I
smaller.
don't think Adam has baking soda either.
Todd,
Oh, Adam, do you know baking soda?
Is that relevant right now?
Well, okay. It just means I
just called him out. I called him out.
Todd,
All right.
come on, man.
So I have I have got mine together.
Oh, look at that. His look
And I
better.
may continue to make the cookie things while we talk, but I'm done with my baking, and I'm just waiting for my oven to preheat here.
So
I would say,
Todd, has your oven actually preheated yet?
Yeah, it's preheated. I got extra cookie dough. I can't fit it all on this pan.
Oh yeah, you definitely can't. As I said,
okay.
you're making like the again, that blob of dough should make somewhere between 40 to 60 cookies, and you don't really want to put more than 12 on a sheet. So this is something where, personally, I kind of like it as a relaxing thing, and I'll be doing it while we continue to talk, is the making more of these and rolling them in the dough is just a sort of, I'm going to end up with a big Tupperware thing filled with cookie bits waiting to be baked.
I'm not getting the deposit back on this apartment.
Apparently,
Toothpaste really works really well in like holes in the wall.
For like carpet.
Not exactly sure. Like you can just say that this is like that sprinkle on, like fragrance that you put on carpets and stuff.
Yeah. I mean, just white spray paint.
The whole
so
place.
since we are at our half-hour mark,
This is what I got. Sorry, I'm very
that's
proud.
great. Give it a go.
It's looking pretty good.
That looks
you gonna
ready to
stick
go.
it
You
in?
want to put them in the oven, and you want to go for about 10 minutes.
All
10
right.
minutes. Okay. Be right
So
back.
Keith,
Microphone.
Yes.
what are some of the additional metaphors that our viewers at home can possibly take away from making cookie balls?
So one of the things, I would say with just the whole overall experience we're dealing with here, comparing the cookie making to the making of a world or a campaign, is that it is okay to start with something familiar. So at the core, we're making chocolate chip cookies here. Everybody knows a chocolate chip cookie, and that's okay. Because there is some value to people having something familiar to work with, to having a touchstone. In Eberron, we actually decided when we were first working on it after the setting search, my original pass on it was like a little more advanced. It was like a little more like sort of 1930s era of development. And we basically decided we didn't want to make it too far from fantasy that people recognize. If you suddenly do start adding in, so to speak, cars, telephones, things like that, it gets a little too removed. And basically, that question of, does everybody use a wand? Or do you still have a place for bows and crossbows?
So you need a touchstone of some sort.
You need a touchstone. And then Eberron also has touchstones in the sense of things like the Last War. We can envision the impact. It's a little like World War II. It's a little like World War I. These are things we understand. The role of the dragon-marked houses, where they're a little like modern corporations. You can take some of the stuff we're familiar with and put that in. The morning, we understand the impact of something like Hiroshima, 9/11. So these are sort of hooks people can sort of attach to. So that's what I'm saying is if you make your world too alien and too original, it can be hard to get with. So there's nothing wrong with starting with a chocolate chip cookie. On the other hand, you've then got to say, but what makes it mine? What makes it interesting? And that's where with these cookies, we've got the cinnamon and the ginger, where it is a chocolate chip cookie, but you're going to find it's not quite like those you've had before. And that comes to Eberron with, again, things like we have elves and we have gnomes, but instead of our gnomes being fun little forest dwellers, they're, crazy secret police assassins. And to me, it's that find ways to make the familiar new and interesting. And then I would add, as we discussed earlier, don't be afraid when you're working with something someone else came up with to make it your own. So don't be afraid to throw out those walnuts, because you want to know what you like. And whether it's Eberron, whether it's just D&D in general, whether it's a rule or a piece of lore, ultimately, this is all about, do you and your gaming group have fun with what you're doing? And if you guys all know you don't like nuts, leave nuts out. So that's a thing. And the other thing about it is, take time on the details. So part of the thing about the Sweet Dream cookies is we do end up with this bit at the end where we're just rolling cookies in powdered sugar. And that's kind of tedious, but it makes the cookies better. And, it's good to take the time and do it right.
Or
you could do it like Todd.
Yeah.
Well, but what I'm saying is, then see the metaphor and see like what happens when you miss the baking soda, and we'll find out. So that is Keith's baking metaphors for Dungeons and Dragons.
I like it. One of my favorite parts, I remember when I was first reading the Wayfinder's Guide to Eberron, so we can start shifting into that and talking about that a little bit.
I've heard of that. Is it any good?
I'm pretty partial to it.
Did you write that?
I remember.
I think Adam did, right?
Yeah. I obviously helped on that. So one of my favorite parts, and I remember reading this, and I just started, I think I was up at the office pretty late because we were trying to really scramble to get that available on D&D Beyond before it released. But I was, up at the office, and I was reading through talking about Zalargo, and it was talking about a gnome warlock that might imagine a great old one patron as the trust. And you know, and actually like that, you know, you're getting this telepathy, but that's some kind of magical, you know, almost these things that you get as class features are magical spy gadgets. And I just remember thinking that was such a unique take on a warlock, and couldn't wait to play one.
That's one of my basic things that I always call out, you know, with any edition, but it's something I've been doing on my website and something I'll certainly be writing about currently working on a book called Morgray's Miscellany with Rudy Rutenberg. And it's one of the things I'll be working in there, is the whole thing to me with classes is a class in D&D has the mechanics, what it actually does. And then it has a layer of flavor over it. A bard is a musician. A barbarian is a savage. But to me, that part is optional. So this is the point, is a warlock uses magic in a different way than a sorcerer or a wizard. And that part is absolute. What defines the warlock is the unique way in which they do magic. Now, the actual mechanism of the patron is something that you can decide what are you doing with, what do you want to do with it. Taking the barbarian, you know, a barbarian is a savage person, you know, who goes into a rage. And you can play them as, oh, they come from the demon wastes, or they come from the Eldeen reaches, and, you know, they are an uncivilized person. On the other hand, in one of my campaigns, we have a Warforged barbarian who the whole idea of his rage isn't so much anger as it's sort of shifting into a battle mode.
Right.
Where he
like
sort
Henry
of yeah, and he just and he sort of buffs up, and, you know, that's why he takes less damage, and, you know, he just can't maintain it for very long. And so to me, as I said, it's that kind of thing. You know, a bard can be a musician and a song person, but you can also say, oh no, my bard is a spy who just knows a little bit of magic and is, you know, really good at talking to people. Or my bard's a wand slinger, you know, as we talked about. And so that's one thing I always encourage people to do, is don't be limited. You know, mechanics are mechanics, and they're there to define how your character works. But the bit on top of that is story. And if you and your game master, or as long as your dungeon master agrees with you, agrees with your idea, I'm playing a Warforged druid in a game that's just starting up. And the whole idea is, I don't know nothing about nature. It is just, I have the ability to alter my body, to change shape.
To adapt.
Yeah, the spells I've chosen are things that all fit with the idea of this is just me using my body, which is made of roots and such, in an interesting way. So I have the capabilities of a druid, but again, my character does not in any way think of themselves as a druid or worship nature or anything like that.
Is that your favorite thing to do, is kind of break down the logic of what a game is, like mechanically, and then just kind of ask those questions? Like all of Magic and Eberron is that question of how and why, like this has to, what's the logic of this multiverse?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of it is that. And you know, that is the point of one of the core ideas of Eberron, was saying arcane magic as presented in D&D from the start, but especially when we were doing this was 3rd edition, behaves in a scientific way. It is not mysterious and enigmatic. It is reliable. You can teach it to someone. You can create a spell. You never cast a fireball and have it not work unless you're punched in the face while you're casting it.
Right.
And so if it is a scientific tool, you know, something that appears to be scientific, why wouldn't it evolve and be incorporated into society the way science is? You know, coming back all the way to my thing with Droam, of if trolls regenerate as dramatically as they do, why don't we eat them? So in Droam,
that's what hot dogs are made of.
Yeah, well, they are in Droam. In Droam, the hot dogs are troll. And so that is a thing that I always try and do, is to, look at the logic of a thing. You know, one of the things, it's just a minor point, but look at elves and say, especially in 3rd edition, an elf could live for up to 1,000 years. Mm-hmm. And to me, it's just stopping there and saying, what does that do? What does that mean to a culture? Especially when you're surrounded by shorter lived races. And to me, those kind of questions are just fun. That's what's part of fun about fantasy, is to look at the ways it's not like our world and to think about the consequences of those.
And even with Eberron, the gods are treated very differently. Like faith is treated very differently. So you could take the idea of like either these gods do exist in Eberron, or it really is just kind of a manifestation of either philosophy or manifestation of pure belief.
The big thing to me about gods, and we talked about this in one of our talks, is that the way they are usually presented in D&D settings, where they are coherent entities that you can meet and you can fight and things like that, it's completely different from our experience of religion, because suddenly there's no need for faith. There's no question. They're just there, and it's more like a sports team. Which team do I support? Not do I believe in them? Because, hey, he just showed up and smashed my town. Of course I believe in him.
When Tiamat shows up, it's not like a theoretical thing.
It's not like, I don't think she's there. But having faith and having to have faith drives so many interesting stories where you can have heresy, you can have schisms within a church, you can have crusades fought for the wrong reasons. And when you have a concrete present God, you always have the question of, if there's a heresy, why doesn't the God just step in and be like, that dude's right, that dude's wrong? And so I wanted a world where we can have those questions and have that uncertainty. And that also comes back to the noir flavor of Eberron, where we want a little greater degree of good and, of sort of grayness around good and evil. And it helps if you don't have incarnations of absolute good and evil sort of walking around showing the way. So yeah, with Eberron, it is absolutely true that divine magic exists. And clerics believe that this is a gift of their god. But that a skeptic can say the fact that you can do magic doesn't mean anything, because, hey, that wizard can do magic. And that, the way I sort of say it is from the skeptic's viewpoint, the arcane caster is like a coder who understands the underlying code of the universe and programs things. The cleric is a dude who just has a lot of apps, and they don't understand how they work. They don't need to. They just know that they punch the "Give Me the Cure Light Wounds" app, and
but they have faith. They have faith that is working, right? And so it really allows faith to be a spotlight that easy to believe when you can see them walking around.
Yeah, and that's exactly the point. Is that we say it is about the faith. And it's just a question of, is it the faith that puts them in contact with the divine power, or is the faith itself just what's actually pulling, focusing the magic? And I like leaving it ambiguous. It's up to you and your game master to decide.
Speaking of ambiguous, we got a couple of Twitter questions. So
great.
I'm going to throw one of them out there to you that you're probably going to hand wave, but I'm going to just ask it anyway. In your games that you have played, have you ever gotten to a point where the PCs have discovered, at least in that version of the campaign world, the cause of the Mournland?
No. So here's a thing. I presented like a Dragon article. I presented like 6 versions of like, here's 6 possibilities that I've thought of that could be a cause of the Mourning. It could be it was a weapon created by House Kneith. It could be that it was the release of an overlord who we haven't yet realized is out. It could be what the Children of Winter say, that it's too much magic. You're breaking the world by using all this war magic. And so, I've got a whole host of this is things it could be. In my personal campaign, I have never actually run a thing where that's been a plot line, because I am much more interested in the effect of the Mourning than I am in the answer. The whole point is that the Mourning is essentially our sort of nuclear deterrent, where as long as we don't know what caused it, we don't know if it can happen again. If it might be overuse of war magic, we can't start fighting. If it might be a doomsday weapon, well, we got to make sure we get it first. And so as long as the Mourning is a mystery, we can't have the next war. And what I always tell people is, if you're going to solve the Mourning, consider the impact that will have on the rest of the world. Because right now, that's really, no one won the last war. And a lot of people aren't happy with how things ended up. But right now, they're too afraid to go back into conflict. And if you either conclusively prove that it can't happen again, there's no reason for them to not do it. And if it was a doomsday weapon, if someone else gets another one, if it's a nuke and someone now, on Dare gets it, then, all bets are off as to what happens next. So that's the point, is you certainly can run that story. I just encourage you to think about the consequences. But for me, I'm much more interested in the Cold War environment that is created by fear of the morning than I am in actually solving the answer.
What's the most unusual direction you've steered Eberron in for your own home game? Because you like a lot of different pop. Like, I've heard that you like a lot of different types of cereals and kind of pop culture genres and stuff like that. Where have you taken Eberron that you think is the most eccentric of those? I'm going to check my cookies to make sure they're not burning.
Yeah. Well, mine are actually just about done here. So I'm going to pull them out. And that is a good question. My thing is, to a large degree, whoops, oh dear, just another bits of plastic. To a large degree, I've run a lot of short campaigns, a lot of sort of 1 year campaigns, as opposed to like run campaign, sort of far into the future. So I've thought about like, what would Eberron look like 100 years from now, sort of thing. I love the idea of doing like a Spelljammer sort of space race plot line. But I haven't actually run that one myself. So I'm trying to think. I usually run things, honestly, on a more smaller scale.
You were telling me something at lunch the other day that I think folks at home, just a little bit of an introduction to the campaign that's currently going on in Kabara.
Yes.
What about that one?
Well, and so that's the thing is as I said, that's a perfect example of I'm more interested in the small scale than the large scale. So I have, for the last, when I started working on the Wayfinder's Guide and started running things, I've got a campaign in Sharn, in the Khalistan district of Sharn. But I also started running a campaign in Kabara, which is on the east coast of Eberron. It's an area that wasn't even inhabited by humans until the last war. When people started settling in, people moved in and discovered that it's filled with dragon shards, which are in some ways the sort of oil or gold, analog. This is the substance we need to fuel the magical economy, so they're very valuable. And it's the idea is you have this sort of gold rush mentality. And so Kabara, to me, it very much has a bit of this sort of Wild West sort of flavor. And so what I did was started a campaign saying we are in a small mining town on the very edge, where the human settlers are sort of pressing into lizard folk territory. Each of the characters has a stake in the town. So the paladin is the sheriff, and the preacher. A preacher was a druid. So we had a preacher who's the druid who's the town preacher, and then each of the other characters. One of them is a Warforged barbarian who's sort of working as an agent for this dwarf who basically is running a lot of the business person who's got an interest in a lot of the claims. So sort of each person, as I said, has a stake in the town, and we sort of built the town up a little. Tell me about the tavern. Tell me about your favorite thing. And then we've just been basically going with what happens to this town. You can think of it very much as like Deadwood and Eberron. And, as they basically press out into the outside and discover like, okay, there's this ancient ruin here. What do you do with it? Oh, can you work things out with the lizard folk who you're basically on their land taking their stuff? And what happens when one of the miners accidentally sort of opens a hole into something that should have been left alone? And so it's fun because it's both, on a sense, as I said, it's this small, very narrow scale. What's going on right now is just affecting this town, but also they have a stake in the town. We're building the town. In fact, I remember a bit, we ended up with this funny twist where we were all talking about what's cool about the tavern. I'm like, there's only one tavern. I want each of you to tell me something about the tavern. And they're like, oh, it's got great acoustics. Oh, they brew their own beer in the basement. Everyone's adding something. And the last guy says, but they don't have working plumbing. And we're all like, what did you have to do that for? So in Eberron, you have what's called a cleansing stone, which, allows you to cleanse things. It's back to our many uses of prestidigitation. And so they have been working. I'm like, a cleansing stone is going to cost you 200 gold. And so they have been working to raise the money to buy a toilet for the bar. And I remember in like the third or fourth session, one of the players at the end saying, I love that even though there's clearly some kind of demonic influence or infestation going on around here, our main concern is getting enough money for a toilet.
Yeah.
It's pretty epic, to be honest.
And so, like I said, you were saying, what's the craziest thing I've done? And what I'm saying is I prefer to focus small. So it's the same in my Sharn campaign, is that basically people are in this district of Khalistan. And I talk about that in the starting points of a section of the Wayfinder's Guide, where each of those starting points is about invest in an area. And why are your players there? And what does that mean? And what's the flavor? So it's the same thing with my Khalistan thing, is we've established, they all hang out at the Cricket Cat. And, sort of like they've developed ties to the Boromar clan. And I like building up that sort of piece of the setting that people feel like it's theirs. On the other hand, in the same thing of Sharn, the Clifftop campaign seed is very much that idea of we want to be Indiana Jones, world traveling, famous adventurers. And so, you can easily do that as well, but it still gives them the Clifftop Adventurers Guild as this is home. This is the place you come back to. So yeah, I don't know. I'm sure I'll think of something as soon as we come off of what's the craziest direction I have gone in a campaign.
It may be just as crazy. It may be just as crazy that the creator of the setting, when you're actually playing the setting, that instead of going for those big swings, you're going for these smaller, sounds like more character-driven and possibly location-driven stories.
Right.
Absolutely. Now, on the other hand, go back to Kabara. And the point is, ultimately, I know that there's an overlord trapped in Kabara, one of the greatest, mightiest forces of evil in the world, and that they're messing with it by sort of what they're doing, digging up their shards and things with that, and that the lizard folk are trying to stop it, but we don't understand what they're doing. And so there is, somewhere along the middle, we're going to run into Rashok, in the Poison Dusk. And like along the way, there's the ultimate epic of we will have to deal with this great evil. So I see where it goes, but I love starting out with the let's focus on the characters as people and let's get them a reason to care about what happens to this village. And like I said, with this group, they're more invested in getting a toilet for the bar than they really are in getting great wealth for themselves. And I just enjoy that.
So the Wayfinder's Guide, talking about the starting points just a little bit, and we're actually getting pretty low on time, so we'll try to get through this.
My cookies are done.
Your cookies are done.
Mine too.
All right, are they cool enough to actually?
I don't know. They're cool enough to eat.
I mean, he's touching it, so it's got to be cool enough.
I'm gonna give mine another couple minutes. I'll be right as we close out.
Whoa,
I'm gonna take a bite.
Todd almost lost all of them.
Did you see me?
Yes, I saw that.
Beautiful. Well, as I said, I've got mine here. I'm looking forward to it. But ask
it looks beautiful. So the Wayfinder's Guide to Eberron, it takes on a different format than really anything that I've seen come before it, especially in Eberron. Talk a little bit about what influenced your decisions to write it in that type of format and that style.
The point is, what I wanted to do with the Wayfinder's Guide was two things. I wanted it to be useful for someone who knows nothing about Eberron, who is coming to the world for the first time. And so we need to introduce at least enough that they understand what are the themes, what's the basic shape of at least Corvair, and where's somewhere that I could start an adventure tomorrow, even if I don't know anything else, which in this case is Sharn. We're like, here's big picture. Here's a slightly smaller picture with Corvair. Here's a very small picture with Sharn. And as a DM, you're going to have to fill in a bunch of blanks yourself to just dive right in. But we've at least given you the idea of it. And this is what it should be like. At the same time, for people who are very familiar and own all the existing books, I didn't want to just reprint exactly what you already had in all those other books. So what I really tried to focus on is giving some of that lore, but then very much being about, but what does this mean to you as a player or game master? How does this affect creating a character, whether that's a player character or an NPC? So in talking about the nations of Corvair, I don't go into a lot of detail about what are all the cities, what's the histories, because that's what you got in the source books, and you can get those. But I do talk about what does it actually mean to be from Aundair? How is an Aundarian different, distinctly, whether it's personality, whether it's character traits? How do you make someone feel like they're from Aundair instead of from Brayland or the Demon Wastes? With religions, I tried to sort of take a page from Paladin Oaths and basically be like, what does it actually mean to you? If you follow this religion, what should you be trying to do? And that's just something we haven't actually really presented just straight up like that in the other books. I tried to do a lot of little backgroundy things. In the Sharn thing, we have a lot of what brings you to Sharn and interacting with backgrounds. If you're an acolyte, if you're a criminal, if you're an urchin, what are some possible ways that directly reflect a criminal in Sharn? I also threw in a couple tables that I just personally kind of like when we get into the noir side of thing. There's one table that's ideas for regrets. What regret might you have? There's another that is, why do you need 200 gold pieces? And that it's just, here is something, you owe a debt to the Boromar clan. You are trying to, you need to get a lesser restoration for a family member who's dying, And part of the point of these things is you could randomly roll them on the table, but it's also just a set of ideas. It's just these are things you could think about. And it's just ways to say, how do you make a character feel like they belong in Eberron? Or if you're trying to create a noir game, a pulp game, how do you capture the flavor of that? And part of that just comes from the characters themselves.
Outstanding. So I think we're getting close here for the moment of truth.
Well, I'm going to take a bite of my cookie then.
We've got to gauge by facial expressions, I guess.
Yeah.
Like how this actually.
All right. Here we go.
All right. Here's the Mr. Keith Baker. He looks mildly impressed.
Mine's good.
He likes it. So Todd didn't immediately, retch or anything.
Wow, it's good.
Congratulations, Todd.
I don't know what I thought was about to happen.
I'm so happy for you.
Like a day-old pizza roll or something. No, it's really good.
You did outstanding. That's good. They actually look interesting too. I see a little bit of the powdered sugar actually, still appeared.
Yeah, they're all cookie-like.
Yeah, so if you look at it really closely, you see you've got a little sort of pattern on it that just gives it a slightly interesting texture. And again, like I said, slightly offsets the cinnamon and the ginger.
Outstanding. So, Keith, I know
yes.
that you are currently working on something that you alluded to a little earlier. Can you tell us anything at all about Moorgraves and what's going on
there? So I'm working on a bunch of things. And one of the things is that Moorgraves Miscellany is something Rudy and I worked together on the sort of character options sections of the Wayfinder's Guide, sections 3 and 4. And part of it is the Wayfinder's Guide is already a lot longer than we expected the book to be. And so there were just certain things that I didn't want to put in either because of space or just because I didn't want to overcomplicate things. So, for example, Sybaris marks, which are the ultimate expression of dragon marks, the idea of having a way to get dragon marks after character generation. Sub-races give you dragon marks right away, but what if you want to develop a dragon mark later on? Improved aberrant dragon marks. So, those are all things, just some other sort of character archetypes that are sort of classic to Eberron, but again, there just wasn't that kind of room in the book. So a lot of just, and coming back to what I was saying, ideas with that sort of, what does it mean to be a fighter? What does it mean to be a warlock? So it's more, it's a lot of it is just of more ideas and options to make your character feel like part of Eberron, along with those things like Sybaris marks, other ways to get dragon marks that have been part of the setting. But basically I decided, but we don't need them in this just immediate introduction to the world. We can add them later.
And I'm going to spare you the question that I get always, which is, when is it happening? When can we have it? When can we have it? So we're going to gloss that over. We're going to gloss that over.
I'm thinking at this point sometime in September.
Okay.
Between
that's
Gen
a target,
Con,
folks. Please do not hold his feet to the
target.
fire. That's a target. So, I think we're about out of time, so we're going to have to wrap up. Keith, thank you so much for showing us how to make Sweet Dream cookies. Congratulations, Todd. You did outstanding. I saw the look on your face. It was epic. Join us next week because I am going to be in Seattle, so I think that Todd and me and Mr. Mike Merles are going to be all together. So Mike Merles is our guest next week. We're going to talk about wrestling. It's going to be a lot of fun.
Mike, you're going to go wrestle live.
It also happens to be the 1 year anniversary of the launch of D&D Beyond next Wednesday, 8/15.
Oh, yeah.
I thought you were saying Raceland from Magier from Dragonlance, and now I want to see Raceland.
Almost.
Raceland. Yeah,
Wrestling. Yeah, that's good.
The fights are over real quick.
We'll see what happens next time. Thanks, everyone, for joining. We'll see you soon.
Bye.
Take care.